They called it St. Helena's Asylum, a forgotten hospital built deep in the misty hills of Southeast Asia. Locals said the walls still whisper the names of those who never left. The building had been shut down since 1983 after a mysterious fire consumed half of the upper floors. No official report was ever released. The government sealed the property, fenced it, and posted signs that said, as condemned, no entry. But that warning never stopped the curious or the foolish. It started as a dare. 4 urban explorers, Ravi, Maya, Ken, and Lisa, ran a small YouTube channel where they filmed haunted places around Asia. They'd visited old schools, ghost villages, even cemeteries. But when a local subscriber messaged them about the hospital that even demons fear, their curiosity turned to obsession. The message read, "Don't go at night. The nurses still walk the halls. They don't know they're dead." Ravi laughed when he read it. "Perfect clickbait," he said, slamming the van door. But Maya felt a cold knot in her stomach. As their van climbed the old mountain road, fog rolled in like waves. The GPS lost signal. The forest swallowed the headlights. Then, from nowhere, a rusted sign appeared by the road. St. Helena's Hospital, founded 1954. A cracked gate hung loose on one hinge. Beyond it, the massive hospital stood like a skeleton. Its windows hollow, its roof caved in, vines crawling over the walls like veins. Ken whispered, "Bro, are we really doing this?" Lisa lifted her camera, too late to back out. "Let's make history." They pushed the gate open. The sound echoed like a scream. Inside, the air was thick with mold and rot. Every step crunched broken glass and syringe needles. The floor was littered with torn patient files, faded x-rays, and rusted wheelchairs. Maya noticed something on the wall. Handprints. Dozens of them, smeared in brown, trailing toward the operating room. She tried to laugh it off. Probably paint. But it wasn't. The smell told her it wasn't. They began filming their intro. Tonight, we explore what locals call the Hospital of the Lost. Many say strange lights appear here after midnight, and that voices echo from the old surgery ward. But as Lisa adjusted the camera focus, Ravi froze. "Wait, do you hear that?" It was faint, like distant humming, a woman's voice, melodic but broken, singing a nursery rhyme. Coming from the second floor. "Could be the wind," Maya said, though her voice trembled. The others nodded. They didn't want to admit what they'd heard. As they climbed the cracked staircase, the sound grew louder. The temperature dropped. Their breath fogged in the flashlight beams. On the landing, Ravi found an old wheelchair. It was still rocking slightly, as if someone had just stood up from it. "Lisa, get that shot," he said. She lifted her camera and gasped. Through her lens, she saw something the others couldn't. A woman in a nurse's uniform standing at the end of the corridor, her face pale, her eyes hollow black pits, and in her hand, a scalpel, dripping with something dark. Lisa blinked, and the figure vanished. The camera feed turned to static. Maya whispered, "Lisa, what did you see?" But Lisa didn't answer. She just stared down the hall, shaking. Ravi laughed nervously. "You're just imagining things." Then a light flickered. Once, twice, and one of the hospital room doors slowly creaked open by itself. The sound of metal scraping echoed down the hallway, like someone dragging something heavy across the floor. Ken whispered, "Bro, we should get out. Now." But Ravi was determined. "No, we film everything. This could make us viral." So they entered the room. Inside was an old operating table, rusted and stained. Above it hung a cracked surgical lamp, and on the floor, fresh footprints. Bare, wet, leading toward the hallway again. But the strangest part, the footprints didn't start anywhere. They just appeared halfway across the room, as if someone had suddenly materialized from thin air. Maya turned off her flashlight. Everyone, quiet. In the darkness, they heard it, a slow, steady beeping sound. Beep, beep, beep. Like a heart monitor, but there was no power in the building. The sound came from the next room. They followed it, and when Ravi pushed the door open, they froze. In the corner, a hospital bed was lit by a single working monitor. Green light blinked across the screen, showing a heartbeat. Next to the bed was a patient chart. It had a name written in blood red ink, Ravi Kumar. Admitted, 2023. Status, deceased. Lisa dropped her camera. It hit the floor, And suddenly, the monitor flatlined. B, E, 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 E. The light went out, and from somewhere above them, a woman's voice whispered, "You shouldn't have come here." Then came the footsteps, dozens of them, running from every direction. They turned on their flashlights and saw shadows rushing toward them, fast, crawling on walls and ceilings. Maya screamed, "Run!" They bolted toward the exit, but the hallway seemed endless. Every corner led to another corridor. Every door they opened brought them back to the same room. It was like the building itself was alive, and it wasn't letting them leave. The halls of St. Helena seemed to twist endlessly, like a maze that had forgotten its own shape. The group moved fast, but no matter how many turns they took, the same peeling walls and rusted door frames followed them like ghosts. Their flashlights flickered again, batteries draining far too fast. Okay. Everyone stop, Ravi said, panting. We're not lost. The exit's gotta be this way. But deep down, he wasn't sure. The building didn't make sense. The corridors felt longer than when they first came in. And that humming, it was back. That same soft, broken tune. The nurse's lullaby echoed faintly through the vents. Maya gripped Ken's arm. It's the same song from before. Ken nodded, trembling. I swear it's coming from the basement. Lisa, still shaken from what she saw through the camera, whispered, I don't want to go down there. But the sound drew them like a thread. Every time they tried to move toward the exit, the humming grew louder from below, almost like the hospital wanted them to come down. They found the old elevator at the end of the hallway. Its doors were half open, covered in scratches, long, thin claw marks. Inside, only darkness. Ravi pointed the camera inside. A faint red emergency light blinked deep down the shaft, revealing broken cables swaying gently as if something had just climbed up them. Maya whispered, Let's just take the stairs. They did. But halfway down, Ken froze. On the wall beside him, someone had carved words, not with paint, but with fingernails. They never left. Help us. She's still here. Each word was smeared with dried brown streaks. At the end of the staircase, the final message read, Turn back. But they didn't. The basement smelled like chemicals and rot. Pipes lined the ceiling, dripping black liquid. The floor was covered in broken glass and old syringes. Ravi's camera light cut across a row of body freezers, their metal doors rusted shut. Each one was labeled with names, except one. The last one was blank. Lisa whispered, Maybe it's empty. Ravi grabbed the handle. It was cold. Too cold. With a heavy creak he pulled. The drawer slid open halfway, and a blackened, mummified hand fell out hanging limp. The skin looked burned, but the nails were clean, almost new. Ken stepped back, gagging. What the hell? But before he could finish, the body's head twitched. Once, twice, then its mouth opened and exhaled a long, rasping breath. They all screamed. The drawer slammed shut on its own. Lisa turned to run, but her camera caught something. A shadow moved behind them, not walking, gliding. In her lens, a nurse in a scorched white uniform appeared, her face hidden by melted flesh. Her jaw hung open, and inside was not a mouth, but rows of surgical needles, glinting under the faint light. Lisa dropped the camera again. It hit the floor, the lens shattering, but it kept recording. The nurse drifted closer, her steps silent. The group froze. Ravi held his breath. Don't move. But Ken stumbled backward, kicking a metal tray. The sound echoed through the basement. The nurse's head jerked toward him instantly. Her body twitched unnaturally, and in a blink, she was standing inches from Ken. Her face was only half human now, the other half burned black, dripping blood like candle wax. She raised her scalpel. Ken screamed, and the lights went out. In the darkness, there was chaos, screams, running footsteps, the sound of slicing metal and bone. Maya's voice echoed, Kien, where are you? But all she heard back was a gurgling sound. Then, silence. The lights flickered back on. Ken was gone. Only his flashlight remained on the floor, pointing at the freezer with the blank tag. Now, it wasn't blank anymore. It had a name carved into it. TNT-ANNK-A. Lisa started sobbing. We need to leave. Please, Ravi. I can't. Ravi grabbed her hand. We'll find a way out. I promise. They ran toward the basement exit, but every time they turned the corner, the follow-away looped back to the same spot, the freezer room. The humming started again, louder, closer. Maya covered her ears. Make it stop. Then a sound echoed. A child's laughter. At the far end of the hallway, a small hospital bed slowly rolled toward them on its own. On it sat a little girl in a patient gown, her hair covering her face. She held a stuffed bear and whispered. The nurse said we can't leave. Lisa whispered, "Oh my God!" The girl tilted her head. She said we belong here now. Then her face lifted, and it wasn't a face anymore. It was a hollow mask, eyes bleeding from black sockets. The bed crashed into the wall with violent force. The lights exploded, and the girl's laughter filled the air, echoing in every direction. Ravi pulled Maya and Lisa into a nearby room, slamming the door. They barricaded it with a metal shelf. Inside was another surgical room, walls covered in mirrors, cracked like spiderwebs. Maya looked into one and gasped. In her reflection, she saw Ken standing behind her, his throat slit, eyes open wide. She turned around. Nothing. But when she looked back, Ken's reflection moved closer, and behind him stood the nurse. The mirrors began to rattle violently, each reflection showing a different version of the same room. Dozens of figures standing behind them, watching silently. Lisa screamed. They're everywhere. One by one, the mirrors began to crack, then shatter, until the floor was covered in shards, and from the shards, hands began to crawl out, pale, burnt, shaking hands. They grabbed at their ankles, pulling, clawing, dragging them down. Ravi kicked free and pulled Maya toward the door. Lisa wasn't so lucky. She slipped on the glass, and one hand grabbed her face, pulling her reflection's mouth over her own. Her scream was muffled as her body was yanked straight into the mirror. Gone. Maya collapsed to the floor, sobbing. Lisa's gone. She's gone. Ravi didn't respond. He just stared at the wall where Lisa's reflection still stood, still screaming. Silent. They burst out into the hallway again, only to find every door now open, each one leading to a hospital room filled with identical patient beds. On each bed, a burned body. Some were doctors, some nurses, some still twitching. Ravi noticed something horrifying. Every one of them wore a name tag, and every tag had one of their names written on it. Ravi, Maya, Ken, Lisa. The humming turned into whispers. Hundreds of overlapping voices filled the air. Some begged for help. Some screamed in agony. Some just repeated the same words. Don't let her find you. Maya clutched Ravi's hand. Who? Who are they talking about? Then came a slow dragging sound. A shadow moved through the corridor ahead, the nurse again. But now her body was bent backward, her spine cracked in multiple places. She crawled along the ceiling like a spider, her face hanging upside down, whispering in that same sing-song tone. The ward is full, but we'll make room for you. Ravi turned to run, but his flashlight beam caught something horrifying. On the wall behind them, a new message had appeared, written in fresh, dripping blood. Admission complete. And beneath it, 4 sets of footprints, leading deeper into the hospital. Their own footprints. The nurse dropped from the ceiling, landing silently, her head tilted with a bone-cracking sound, her scalpel glinting as she whispered, "Visiting hours are over." Ravi screamed for Maya to run. But as they sprinted down the hall, the walls began to pulse like veins filled with blood. Doors slammed one by one until only a single path remained, leading straight toward the old surgical theater. And as they entered, the lights flickered once, revealing dozens of figures in nurse uniforms. All burned, all headless, standing in silence. The air inside the surgical theater was thick, like breathing through a wet cloth soaked in blood. The walls seemed to move, their pale tiles pulsing faintly, as if the hospital itself had a heartbeat. Ravi's camera flickered back to life for a second, capturing the scene in brief flashes. Rusted operating tables, broken lamps hanging like vines, and rows of lifeless nurses with no heads, their white uniforms stained in shades of crimson and black. Maya's voice trembled. "Ravi, where are their heads?" Before he could answer, the sound of metal scraping across the floor echoed. A single wheelchair rolled out of the shadows, empty, except for the blood trail it left behind, and another, and another. One by one, more wheelchairs started sliding out from the darkness, until the entire floor was filled with them, each one moving on its own, circling the two survivors like a ritual. Ravi raised the camera again, his voice shaking. "Who's doing this?" "WHO's there." The lens focused for a brief moment and captured a reflection in the operating lamp above. Someone, or something, was standing behind him. A tall figure in a nurse's outfit, her face hidden behind a cracked surgical mask, her hands gloved in dark, sticky blood. But her reflection, it wasn't just one. It multiplied, spreading through every reflective surface in the room. Each mirror, each metal tray, each glass cabinet door, 100 reflections of the same burned nurse, all staring at Ravi and Maya. Then the power surged. All the lights came on at once, bright white and blinding. The room was filled with patients, dozens of them lying on beds that hadn't been there before. Each was motionless, each attached to IV tubes filled with dark red liquid. And in the center of the room stood the head nurse. Her skin looked melted, her eyes replaced with black sockets dripping smoke. In her hands, she held a clipboard made of bone. She spoke softly, her voice layered with hundreds of others. "Welcome to St. Helena's. You're late for your surgery." Maya screamed and grabbed Ravi's arm. They backed away, but the nurse's voice echoed again, closer now. "We've prepared the room for you. Just sign the consent form." She raised her hand, and suddenly the clipboard was inches from Ravi's face. Words were carved into it with nails. Patient name, Ravi Das. Procedure, lobotomy. Status, incomplete. He dropped the camera, stumbling backward. No, I didn't. This isn't real." But the hospital seemed to disagree. The floor beneath them turned soft. Tiles cracked, revealing a layer of flesh underneath, pulsing, bleeding, breathing. Each step they took left footprints made of blood. The operating lights above began to flicker rapidly. Each flash revealed something new. Faces pressed into the walls, eyes moving inside the ceiling tiles, mouths whispering their names. "Ravi, Maya, stay still, stay still." "She's watching." The head nurse stepped forward, her body jerking with every movement. Ravi grabbed a scalpel from a nearby tray. He pointed it toward her, shouting, "Stay back." But she didn't. She tilted her head slowly, her neck stretching longer than humanly possible. Then she whispered something, a word that sounded ancient. The lights exploded. Darkness swallowed everything. In the pitch black, Ravi could hear breathing. Close. Too close. He turned his flashlight on again and screamed. Maya was gone. In her place, on the operating table, lay a patient covered with a white sheet. He pulled it off and froze. It was Maya, eyes wide open, pupils dilated, a breathing tube forced down her throat. But she was still alive. Barely. She tried to move, her fingers twitching weakly. "Ravi, help me." He grabbed her hand, sobbing. I'm here, I'll get you out." But her body convulsed violently. Blood poured from her mouth, and her chest caved inward with a sickening crack. Something inside her moved, a shape pressed against her rib cage, like a hand trying to push through from the inside. Then, silence. The surgical monitors flickered back on. One by one, they displayed the same message. "Surgery complete." Ravi stumbled backward, horrified. He turned toward the exit and froze. Every patient in the room had sat up, their heads tilted in perfect unison, their mouths opened, and from each came a voice, Maya's voice. "You left me here." He dropped the scalpel, shaking uncontrollably. No. The patients started chanting her name. Maya. Their heads turned sharply toward him, bones cracking, jaws unhinging. Ravi bolted for the door. He crashed through the hallway, past the freezer room, past the mirrors, not stopping until he reached the main lobby. The front doors were right there, wide open. He ran straight for them and slammed into something invisible. It was like hitting a glass wall. The air rippled. The exit wasn't real. He turned around. The nurse was standing at the end of the hallway, her scalpel dripping blood. She whispered, "You can't leave." "You were admitted." The lights dimmed again, casting everything in a sick green glow. Behind her, shadows began to emerge, dozens of them. Doctors, nurses, patients, all burned, twisted and mutilated. They filled the hall, their bodies jerking like puppets. One of them spoke with a voice that didn't match its face. "We told you to turn back." Ravi screamed. He threw the camera at the wall, smashing it, but as it fell, it kept recording, its cracked lens pointing toward the nurse. She raised her scalpel slowly and began walking forward. Each step echoed like a heartbeat. Thud, thud, thud. Ravi backed away until he hit the reception desk. He picked up a broken metal rod from the floor and swung it, screaming at the top of his lungs. "Stay away from me." But she didn't stop. Her head tilted again, and her voice came from everywhere now, through the speakers, the vents, the broken intercoms. "You were chosen. You belong to St. Helena's. You all do." The walls began to move, closing in on him. He swung again, hitting nothing but air. The figures got closer, their faces melting into one another, a sea of suffering and madness. He turned one last time, and there it was. The elevator. The same one from before. Its doors were open now, flickering red light inside. He ran into it, hitting the ground button repeatedly. The doors started closing, but before they could shut completely, a burned hand slipped in between. The nurse's face appeared through the gap. Her black eyes met his, and she whispered one last thing. "No one ever leaves." The doors slammed shut, and the elevator began to descend. The ride was silent. No creaking, no humming, just silence. Then, a soft voice over the intercom. "B1, Morgie." Ravi's heart stopped. He frantically pressed every button, but none responded. The elevator reached the bottom with a soft ding. The doors opened slowly, and inside was the freezer room. But now it was clean, bright, sterile. Every freezer drawer was labeled neatly, rows of metal shining under the cold light. Ravi stepped out slowly, his breath visible in the air. He turned toward the first drawer. The name tag read Lysa NG. The next one, Kianti ANAKA. The next, Maya Kumar. And at the very end, Ravidas. He backed away, shaking his head violently. "No, I'm still alive." The freezers all clicked open at once. A freezing wind rushed through the room, and from each drawer, a body sat up, all of them wearing his friends' faces, but their eyes pitch black. They reached toward him, and in perfect unison whispered, "Join us." The lights went out. The sun had completely vanished by the time they reached the main building. The wind blew across the cracked parking lot, carrying the faint smell of rust, wet soil, and something chemical, something that burned slightly in their noses. A thick layer of fog rolled in from the surrounding jungle. It looked like the hospital itself was exhaling. A slow, ghostly breath. Arjun was the first to break the silence. "Bro, we'll just shoot some B-roll outside first, okay? Get some fog shots, maybe drone footage. We don't go in yet." Kavi nodded. "Yeah, just outside." But deep down, he already knew they were going in. They always did. The group started walking along the cracked concrete path toward the front doors. Their flashlights sliced through the darkness like tiny blades, revealing faint letters on the wall. Kumaran General Hospital, Est, 1965. The metal sign hung by a single nail, swinging slightly, squeaking with every gust of wind. The sound echoed, sharp and lonely. They reached the front entrance. Two large glass doors, shattered and covered in grime. Vines had crawled up the handles and wrapped around them like hands trying to keep the door shut. Arjun looked around. "Bro, you rolling?" Kavi nodded, camera on his shoulder. "Rolling." Arjun stepped closer, brushing the vines away and pushing one of the doors. It gave a long metallic groan, a sound that seemed to go on forever. The air inside was different, colder, thicker. It smelled like rust, and something sweet, like old blood. The floor was littered with leaves, bits of paper, and broken equipment. A single hospital bed lay on its side, its wheels rusted in place. The walls were peeled, layers of white paint hanging like old skin. "Yo, this looks insane," Siva whispered, aiming his light down a dark corridor. Their footsteps echoed. Every sound seemed louder inside. Somewhere in the distance, water dripped. Drip, drip, drip. Each drop echoed like a clock ticking backward. They began exploring, slowly, carefully, whispering into their mics. Arjun described what they saw while Kavi captured the haunting visuals. A torn curtain, a rusted wheelchair in the corner, and on the wall, faint handprints, small ones, children's hands pressed in what looked like brownish stains. Siva pointed. "Bro, that's blood, ah." Kavi zoomed in. "Old paint la," he said nervously, but his voice cracked a little, because deep down, he knew it wasn't paint. They walked deeper, past the reception desk, into the patient wards. There were names on the door plates. Ward A, Ward B, ICU. Arjun stopped in front of one. The door was half open, hanging crookedly. When he shone his light inside, his breath caught rows of rusty hospital beds, IV poles bent in half, and in one corner, a small, cracked baby incubator. Inside it lay a doll, covered in dust, missing an eye. Its plastic face melted slightly from heat. Someone had written on the wall behind it, "They never left." The letters were drawn in something dark and sticky, still fresh. Siva froze. Who wrote that, bro?" No one answered. A loud clank echoed down the hallway, metal hitting tile. All three of them turned at once. Sound from the corridor. Kavi whispered. They pointed their lights down the hall, empty, silent, but something had moved. A small metal tray lay spinning on the floor, as if it had just been thrown. They hadn't touched anything. Arjun whispered, "Don't panic. Maybe rat or wind." But his hand was shaking. The air was freezing now. Their breath showed as mist. They decided to keep filming, because that's what ghost hunters do. You push forward, no matter how much your instincts scream to run. They entered another section of the hospital, a narrow corridor lined with rusted metal lockers. One of them was slightly open. Kavi pointed the camera. "Go open that, bro," he said quietly. Arjun stepped forward and pulled the locker door. It creaked open slowly, and inside, a nurse's uniform, yellowed and torn, hung from a hook. Pinned to the chest pocket was an old ID badge. Nurse Latha, ICU department. The photo was faded, but her eyes seemed strange. Even in the old picture, she wasn't smiling. She looked terrified. "Bro, take a close up," Kavi said, zooming in. Just then, the locker door slammed shut by itself. Bang! The sound echoed through the entire hallway. They jumped back. Siva shouted, "What the hell? Who did that?" No one was near it. No wind. Just silence. Kavi whispered shakily, "Keep recording. Don't stop." They hurried down the corridor, moving toward a sign that said maternity ward. The door to the ward was slightly ajar. Inside, the smell hit them first, rotting, like old meat and mildew. Flies buzzed near the ceiling. There were hospital beds lined up, each with small rusted cribs next to them. One crib still had a torn blanket inside. Arjun slowly lifted his flashlight and saw something carved into the metal of the crib. HELPUS. The letters were deep, scratched by fingernails or something sharp. Kavi swallowed hard. "Bro, this place isn't right." A sudden loud thud came from behind them. They turned. The door they came through was now closed, completely. Siva ran to it and tried to pull it open. It wouldn't move, locked from the other side. But there was no one else there. That's when they heard it. A faint, distant crying. A baby's cry, soft, but echoing from somewhere deep inside the hospital. They froze in place. Kavi whispered, "Bro, is that a recording?" Arjun shook his head. No speaker sound. It's real." The crying grew louder, closer, and suddenly stopped, just like that. Dead silence. Then a faint whisper floated through the corridor, a woman's voice, soft, sad. "Where is my child?" Siva's flashlight flickered. Then the lights on their cameras glitched for a moment, static across the screen. When it came back, a shadow stood behind one of the cribs, tall, thin, wearing a nurse's uniform. Kavi gasped, "Bro, behind you. Behind you." Arjun spun around. Nothing. But the smell of burning flesh filled the air. Then, the baby's cry started again. Only this time, it wasn't distant. It was right next to his ear. "Wah, wah, wah." Arjun dropped his flashlight. It rolled on the floor, the beam spinning wildly. For a split second, it lit up the far wall, and they saw a figure. A woman in a blood-stained nurse's outfit, her face blackened like ash, one eye gone. She was holding something, a small bundle wrapped in cloth. She looked at them, and smiled. For a few seconds, none of them could move. The faint beam from Arjun's dropped flashlight spun across the room, flashing over the broken beds and the cracked walls. Every time the light turned, they caught a glimpse of her, that nurse standing silently in the far corner, clutching the small bundle. No one dared to breathe. Even the air itself seemed to freeze. The nurse's head tilted slowly, unnaturally slow, as though bones were grinding together inside her neck. Her one remaining eye locked onto them. Her lips moved, but the sound that came out wasn't human. It was a long, broken moan, like someone crying underwater. Siva whispered, trembling, "Bro, please tell me that's some prank." Kavi's voice cracked. "No, no one else here." The nurse took one step forward. The sound of her shoe scraping the tile echoed, sharp and metallic. Then another step, each one faster, each one louder. Arjun shouted, "Run!" They sprinted out of the ward, their flashlights bouncing wildly against the peeling walls. Their footsteps echoed through the empty corridors like a stampede of fear. Kavi's camera was still recording, the red light blinking in the dark. They turned into another hallway, desperate for an exit. But the hospital had changed. The corridor behind them was gone. In its place, another wall. No doors, no windows, just concrete. "Bro, this wasn't here," Kavi shouted. The layout had shifted, like the hospital itself was alive, trapping them inside. They turned a corner and froze again. In front of them stood a row of hospital beds lined perfectly down the hallway. Each bed had a white sheet covering a body-shaped figure underneath. Siva whispered, "What the hell is this?" He reached for the nearest sheet and slowly pulled it down. Empty. Just air. But as he turned away, the sheet rose back up, like someone underneath had just sat up. Siva screamed and stumbled backward, his flashlight flickering. Arjun grabbed his arm. "Don't look." "Go." They ran again, turning down another corridor. The walls seemed to stretch longer with every step. The sound of footsteps followed behind them, not theirs, slower, heavier, dragging. Kavi spun around for a second. Through the flickering light, he saw the nurse, now closer. Her face twisted, skin melting like wax, her jaw hanging loose. The bundle in her arms was dripping dark fluid onto the floor. He pointed his camera at her, voice trembling. "Who are you? What do you want?" The nurse stopped. Then, in a voice that was part whisper, part growl, she said, "He took my baby." Kavi froze. "What?" The nurse pointed at the far wall. There, written in massive letters, was something new. DRKUMARAN, must pay. Arjun stepped closer. "That's the founder's name, right? The doctor who built this place?" Siva nodded shakily. "Bro, I think something happened here, like murder or something." Suddenly, the hospital lights flickered for the first time in decades. A faint hum filled the air. Then, the PA system came on. A crackling old speaker above their heads whispered, "Dr. Kumaran, a report to the maternity ward." Immediately, the three men froze. The voice was faint, but it was clear. And the maternity ward was the place they had just escaped from. "No way," Arjun muttered. "No way we're going back there." But then, a loud crash from behind them. The ceiling lights burst one by one. Pop, 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 chasing them down the hall. A wind roared through the building, pushing them forward. They had no choice but to run, back toward the ward. The hospital seemed to lead them there, like it wanted them to see something. When they entered, the nurse was gone. The baby's cry had stopped. The incubator in the corner was now glowing faintly. Kavi walked closer, his camera trembling in his hands. Inside the incubator lay something wrapped in dirty white cloth. He lifted the edge and screamed. It wasn't a baby. It was a rotting heart, still beating faintly. Veins moved like worms around it, pulsing in rhythm. He dropped the cloth and stumbled back, gagging. "What is that?" Arjun's flashlight flickered. He pointed it at the wall and saw a shadow moving on it. But there was no one casting it. The shadow of the nurse. She was crawling along the ceiling above them, upside down, her head turning 180 degrees, black liquid dripping from her mouth. Siva screamed and bolted toward the exit, but before he reached the door, it slammed shut. The nurse dropped from the ceiling, landing behind him with a sickening thud. He turned just in time to see her grab his face. Her fingers burned into his skin like iron. Smoke rose as his flesh sizzled. He screamed once, then went silent. His body went limp, falling to the floor, eyes open, mouth frozen mid-scream. Kavi and Arjun stared in horror. The nurse straightened up, her one eye glowing faintly red. She whispered, "One for me." The lights went out. Total darkness. Only the faint sound of dragging echoed now, as if she was pulling Siva's body somewhere down the hall. Kavi whispered, shaking uncontrollably, "Bro, we have to leave now. Now." They ran, turning corner after corner. The corridors looked different every time, like the hospital was rearranging itself. Every door they tried was locked. Every staircase led back to the same hallway. Finally, they burst into what looked like an operating theater. Cold metal tables, broken lamps, surgical tools scattered everywhere. The air smelled like disinfectant and death. Kavi leaned against the wall, panting. "We can't stay here." Then the old projector in the room flickered on by itself. Dust filled the beam of light as it projected onto the far wall. A grainy video started playing. A doctor in a white coat stood beside a woman strapped to a bed. The woman screamed, pleading for help. The doctor, face partly hidden, said, "You'll thank me when this is over. We're saving medicine." Then he picked up a scalpel. The recording cut off, but the screen still glowed faintly. In the corner of the video, a name tag could be seen. Dr. Kumaran. Arjun whispered, "Oh my God." He experimented on her. Kavi's camera caught the static again, glitching violently. When it stabilized, the nurse was standing right behind Arjun. Before Kavi could shout, she grabbed Arjun by the throat. Her blackened fingers dug into his skin, lifting him off the ground. His body shook violently, eyes bulging. The sound that came out of her wasn't human. It was like a baby's cry mixed with a scream. Kavi screamed, "Let him go." But the nurse turned her head toward Kavi and hissed, "He took everything from me. Now I take everything from you?" She twisted Arjun's neck. A snap echoed through the room. He dropped to the floor, lifeless. Kavi backed away, tears streaming down his face. He pointed his flashlight at her. She began walking toward him, slow and deliberate, dragging her feet through Arjun's blood. The light flickered again, and behind her, dozens of shadowy figures appeared. Doctors, patients, nurses, all watching silently. The dead of the hospital had woken up. Kavi's breath came in short, sharp bursts. The air smelled of decay, old blood, and something faintly metallic. His hands shook as he held the camera, the red recording light blinking like a heartbeat. The nurse from before stood in the center of the operating theater, unmoving, her blackened eyes staring through him. Around her, shadows crowded the corners, shapes of people, faces distorted beyond recognition, all watching silently. Kavi's voice trembled. "Please, I don't belong here. I didn't take anything." The nurse tilted her head slowly, impossibly. The shadows behind her moved as one, sliding forward like water. Kavi backed into a wall, realizing there was nowhere left to run. Then he saw it, the exit door glowing faintly at the far end of the hall. It looked normal, safe, real. He ran toward it, ignoring the whispers that rose from the walls, faint voices repeating, "You belong to us. You belong to us." The floor beneath him began to ripple like liquid. With each step, it felt as if it were trying to pull him under. The exit moved further away. No matter how fast he ran, it stayed just out of reach. Kavi stopped, trembling. The camera swung around, and he saw the nurse standing inside the exit itself, blocking the way. Her mouth opened, and a voice echoed through his mind. "There is no leaving. Not now. Not ever." The shadows around her began to twist, forming a circle. Kavi could see figures he recognized. Friends, strangers, patients, all staring at him with empty black eyes. Their lips moved, whispering together, "You can't escape. You never did." Kavi raised his hands, shaking, as if pleading. I'm sorry. I won't touch anything. Please, just let me go." The nurse tilted her head further. Her single eye glowed red in the darkness. Then, slowly, she lifted one hand, pointing directly at him. The shadows surged forward. Kavi stumbled backwards, screaming. The walls of the hospital began to bend inwards, stretching impossibly tall, suffocatingly close. The whispers grew louder, filling his head. The hospital keeps its own. The hospital feeds on the curious. The hospital remembers. Kavi's vision blurred. The floor dissolved beneath him, replaced by a darkness so deep it seemed infinite. He felt himself falling, not downwards, but inward. A strange sensation overcame him. Time slowed. He could see the shadows merging into a single mass, and the nurse's eyes seemed to pierce through everything he had ever known. He understood. The hospital was not a place. It was a living thing. A predator. A memory made flesh. And now, it remembered him. Kavi screamed again, but it was swallowed instantly. His own voice echoed back at him from everywhere and nowhere at once. The camera dropped to the floor. Its red light blinked weakly as it captured one last image. The nurse, standing over him, her blackened eye meeting the lens. The shadows behind her folding into the walls, and on the wall, carved fresh in deep dark letters, "Welcome home." The screen went black. The whispers stopped. The building fell silent again, except for the faint sound of a door creaking open, a door that led back out to the foggy night, empty and waiting for the next curious soul. And in the distance, deep within the hospital's twisted halls, something moved. Waiting, watching, hungry. No one ever left St. Helena's, and no one ever would. And if you think you're brave enough to face more stories like this, make sure to subscribe to our channel, Dark Vision, and hit the bell icon so you never miss the next chilling tale.